When you feel lost, the universe is recalibrating you. She stood at the crossroads at 3 a.m., not literally, but in that terrifying internal way where every direction feels wrong. Her old life didn't fit anymore. The new one hadn't arrived yet, and in that liminal space she wondered if she'd somehow broken herself beyond repair. Maybe you know that feeling, when the GPS of your soul goes dark, when the plans you built so carefully crumble like paper in rain, when everyone else seems to know exactly where they're going and you can't even remember where you started. She used to think being lost meant she'd made a mistake, that somewhere along the way she'd taken a wrong turn, and now she was paying for it. But what if being lost wasn't the problem? What if it was the process? There's a moment in every transformation that feels like dying, not the poetic kind, the raw, disorienting kind where you wake up and don't recognize your own desires anymore. The career that once excited you feels hollow. The relationships that felt solid suddenly feel performative. Even your reflection seems like a stranger's. She tried to fight it at first, scrolled endlessly for answers, asked everyone else what she should do, tried to force the old certainties back into place like puzzle pieces that no longer fit. But the universe doesn't respond to force. It responds to surrender. When was the last time you let yourself be truly uncertain? Neuroscientists at MIT discovered something profound about periods of confusion and disorientation. When our familiar patterns break down, the brain enters what they call heightened neuroplasticity, a state where new neural pathways form faster than at almost any other time in adult life. Being lost isn't failure, it's fertile ground. But here's the part no one tells you. The recalibration period feels like punishment because we've been taught that productivity and forward motion are the only valid states of being. We're not supposed to pause. We're not supposed to not know. We're supposed to optimize, execute, keep moving. She spent 3 months feeling like she was wasting her life, watching everyone else post their wins while she couldn't even articulate what she wanted anymore. The comparison was suffocating. The silence where her old ambitions used to be felt like emptiness. Then one morning something shifted. Not dramatically, not like the movies promise, just a softening. She stopped asking, "What's wrong with me?" and started asking, "What's trying to emerge?" The universe doesn't recalibrate you to punish you. It recalibrates you because you've outgrown the coordinates you've been using. The old map was designed for a different version of you, one with different fears, different dreams, different capacity, and now that version is too small. Think about a caterpillar in its chrysalis. If you cut it open to help it transform faster, it dies. The dissolution has to happen in the dark, the complete liquefaction of what it was, before it can become what it's meant to be. There's no shortcut through the formlessness. She stopped trying to speed up the process, stopped asking friends to tell her who she should become, started sitting with the discomfort of not having answers, and in that space, that terrifying, gorgeous space of unknowing, something unexpected happened. She started hearing herself again. Not the voice that echoed everyone else's expectations, not the one performing certainty to avoid judgment, but the quiet one underneath, the one that had been whispering for years, drowned out by the noise of who she thought she had to be. Research from Stanford's psychology department reveals that major life transitions create what they call identity gaps, periods where our old self-concept no longer applies, but our new one hasn't solidified. These gaps feel excruciating because humans are meaning-making machines. We need narrative coherence, but the gap is where transformation actually lives. Could you exist without knowing exactly who you are for a while? She learned to sit at the window during those formless weeks. Watch the sky change colors, feel time move differently, let herself be boring, let herself be uncertain, let herself rest in the not knowing without turning it into content or productivity or even personal growth. Because here's the truth they don't put in the self-help books. Sometimes the most profound growth happens when you're not trying to grow at all, when you're just being, breathing, existing without optimization. The city moved outside her window, urgent, loud, relentless. She stayed still, and in that stillness, she wasn't giving up. She was recalibrating. Your soul has its own timeline, not the one society imposes, not the one your anxiety demands. The universe operates on frequency, not force, and when you're being recalibrated, you're not falling behind. You're being tuned to a signal you couldn't hear before. She started noticing synchronicities. Not mystical, just alignment. A book recommendation that landed exactly when she needed it. A conversation that opened a door she didn't know existed. Opportunities that emerged not from striving, but from finally being clear enough to recognize them. The recalibration wasn't about finding her purpose. It was about removing everything that wasn't truly hers. The borrowed dreams, the inherited expectations, the goals she adopted to feel valid. Layer by layer, the universe was stripping away what didn't belong so what did belong could finally breathe. Dr. Lisa Feldman Barrett, neuroscientist at Northeastern University, describes this as affective realism. Our emotions literally construct our reality by filtering what we perceive. When we're in chaos, our brain is rebuilding its perceptual filters. We're not broken. We're updating our operating system. Maybe being lost is just the universe's way of saying, the coordinates you've been using no longer lead where you actually want to go. She thought she wanted certainty, but what she really wanted was authenticity. And authenticity requires shedding every layer of performance until all that's left is the raw, uncertain, beautifully imperfect truth of who you actually are when no one's watching. The hardest part wasn't the confusion. It was learning to trust that the confusion had intelligence, that her soul knew what it was doing even when her mind couldn't comprehend it. That sometimes the best thing you can do is stop forcing solutions and let the answer find you. One evening, months into the recalibration, she realized something. She wasn't the same person who started this journey. Not because she'd achieved something, not because she'd figured everything out, but because she'd learned to exist in the question mark without needing to immediately fill it with an answer. The universe recalibrates you by making your old life uncomfortable enough that you have to evolve, by making the familiar feel foreign so you'll finally explore the unfamiliar, by taking away what you thought you needed so you can discover what you actually do. And somewhere in that stripping away you find it. Not the perfect plan, not the ultimate answer, but something more valuable, your own inner compass, the one that was there all along, just waiting for the external noise to quiet down enough for you to hear it. What surprised me most during my own recalibration wasn't just how a simple analog journal changed my routine. It was how I started feeling my thoughts again instead of just consuming everyone else's. This isn't a recommendation, just something that reminded me what clarity feels like when it's not filtered through a screen. I'll leave the link below if you want to explore what I mean. When she finally emerged from the fog, and she did emerge, just not in the way she expected, it wasn't with a new 5-year plan or a perfect vision board. It was with presence, with the ability to trust herself in the unknowing, with the understanding that being lost was never the problem. It was the portal. The universe doesn't recalibrate you because you're broken. It recalibrates you because you're ready. Ready for a frequency you couldn't access from where you were. Ready for a version of your life that your old self couldn't even imagine. Ready to finally come home to yourself. She looked out the window one last time before closing her journal. The city was still moving, still loud, still demanding. But now she understood something profound. You don't find yourself by searching everywhere outside. You find yourself by finally being still enough inside to recognize what was there all along. Maybe being lost was never about finding your way back. Maybe it was about discovering that there's no back to return to, only forward, only new, only the terrifying and gorgeous freedom of building a life from the truth of who you're becoming, not the memory of who you were. This content is educational and reflective in nature, not therapeutic advice. For mental health support, please consult qualified professionals. Tell us what moment hit you the hardest and where in the world you're watching from. See you in the next reflection.